You're watching News at Prime. Let's bring you this conversation now. The case against Nelisiwe Thusini, who is accused of murdering her two young children, has been postponed to the 24th of July. The 29-year-old woman appeared briefly in the Umlazi Magistrate's court earlier today. She was arrested after the bodies of her children, a toddler and a baby, were found wrapped in a blanket in an open field in the area of eNgonyameni. This is in the south of Durban. The state says it will be opposing bail, citing her as a flight risk. Thusini will remain behind bars while she undergoes a mental evaluation. Well, the father of the children says he had been trying to get in touch with the mother before the incident took place. He cited previous mental issues before the killing of the two minors.
Thursday yakhona ifoni ngangikuyifonela ingangeni. So nje mengangeni ifoni bese ngaba worried ukuthi ayish nje umuntu owazama vele before commit suicide like 3 times. Ngase ngithume mama ukuthi akazama ukubasondeza eduze angilandele abantwana naye babe seduzane. Ngokuthi nginocabangela ukuthi ke ngomuntu osanda kudeta ke akwazi ukuthi naye abe free umama khona umassistant omunye umntwana. Ngathi like 6:20 ntambama ugayi Sunday wafona ekhala wathi yena akazi kwenzakaleni isho ukuthi namademoni kuphelile ngathi ikhanda lami ngajela ukuthi methi kuphelile ngathi mhlawumbe like umuntu ongalayo ukuthi ayike siya break up or something kanti umuntu akubreak up yena indlela shothi ngitshela ngayo usebulele shothi ingane ngoba manje methi khala ethi sekuphelile ngathi angazi ngenzeni ilo angisho namademoni angazi kwenzakalani kuphelile ngathi mina ngiyahamba ngekhaya. So kwi background lapha nekhuluma ngezwe ingane ithini mina sengiyajika sengekhaya. So kungasho ukuthi ke yilokho engathi ngiyakwazi ngoba Monday ngase ngithola i-call ngabo 20:08 ekseni sebenje bathola inote ebhalwe inamba za mama nenamba zami ukuthi nabo kwabantwana sekuphelile ngabo.
All right, let's stay with this story now. And we are joined by Laurie Pieters-James. She is CEO at Cybereti Offender Profiler, to look at what could possibly have led the mother to do this. Laurie, good evening to you. Thank you very much for your time. As you would have heard prefacing those sound bites, the father does appear to be pointing to previous issues of mental health. Could we conclude that this is what may have led her to do this?
It could be. Of course, the father isn't a mental health professional, so that would have to be assessed by a mental health professional. But there are a number of reasons that lead to filicide, which we've categorized with psychological and criminological studies, and definitely acute psychotic filicide or mental disorders are a huge cause. You've also got the unwanted child that may result in this. Also altruistic, where the parent believes the death is in the best interests of the child, for example. So that can also be exacerbated by mental illness. And then obviously you've also got the accidental, which we could rule out here because it's both children. And then often there's an element of spousal revenge. So it would be very interesting to look at the relationship between the father and the mother to see if this may not possibly have been a spousal revenge motivated killing as well. Yeah. Because if they are estranged, that often does happen, yes.
The father says before this happened, he did receive a call from the mother of the children, and she was suggesting that it's over between us. She is suggesting that perhaps she could be overcome by demons. I want to ask a question about cultural beliefs, religious beliefs, and whether they contribute in any way to this. It's called filicide, when a mother kills their own children.
Well, actually, when either parent, it can either be paternal or maternal, but in this case, yes, maternal.
Understood. So do those contribute in any way, cultural, religious beliefs?
Yes, absolutely, they can. Also, as I said, you know, you could be dealing with psychosis. It could be, it's unlikely that it's Christian related, but I mean, in Africa and South Africa, we do have a lot of still indigenous cultural beliefs which may motivate the offending party depending on what they believe. So definitely culture, background, socioeconomic circumstances, substance abuse, you know, mental disorders, definitely. Even narcissism, believe it or not, that's quite a common one. And I think we saw that in the Jaden Lee case. The mother was quite narcissistic, believing that she couldn't be caught. So there are, you know, unfortunately, I can't tell you in this case what is. I would have had to assess the actual mother, so I can't tell you specifically. But yes, there are definitely cases where cultural beliefs, witchcraft, are definitely involved as a motivator. Yes.
I'm glad you've cited the Jaden Lee Meek story, because that's another child whose mother is undergoing a case right now. There are other previous stories. A mother in the Eastern Cape decided to feed her children rat poison. The speculation regarding that particular case was that this could have been poverty related. The mother simply could not be able to feed her children. I'm citing all of these cases to find out from you whether the country should be concerned about a growing number of these cases. Have these become commonplace?
Yes, they are and always have been commonplace in South Africa. And, you know, we have so many motivators here. And I think one of the motivators is mothers that are on their own as families degrade. And there are so many single parent families, specifically mothers, trying to raise their children, and they become completely emotionally devastated. And, you know, there's limited means. They may actually even feel, as I said before, that the child would be better off dead because they cannot provide for their needs. And of course, we don't have enough social workers. We don't have enough psychologists. The police are not ideally trained to manage these situations. There are so many contributing factors in South Africa, and unfortunately, they're only getting worse as the state becomes more and more stressed for finances. You know, and it's only going to get worse. And unless communities start stepping in and actually supporting these moms and taking or fathers that are struggling. You know, we are fighting a losing battle. So this ultimately is going to boil down to community support.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because we're now trying to seek solutions to try and prevent this. So relationships, we all know, they go through ups and downs. What should the responsibility of parents to these young parents, I'm now talking perhaps grandparents, what should be their responsibility be when they see that there is trouble between the two people who have just brought young children to the world and, I guess, the broader community?
Well, I think the first point that we have to really pay great attention to, the majority of filicide cases committed by mothers actually is post-birth. So postpartum depression is a huge contributor. So immediately start looking when that mom is just out of the hospital, if she's coping. You know, poverty is very common, so the economic contributor is always an aspect that we have to look at in South Africa. Is the father in the picture, not in the picture? What's the relationship like between the parents? Stepping in, making sure that your support structure is in place. In other words, if the parent, the struggling parent is a mom and a Christian, perhaps the church could step in. If the grandparents have means, perhaps they could step in and monitor. And I think one of the biggest problems is open channels of communication. Because a lot of the time when somebody is depressed, they isolate and withdraw, and they try to cope by themselves because they fear judgment from the community. And I think that is one of the biggest barriers that we face, is actually becoming an accepting community and a supportive community, which we've lost today because we live in a narcissistic community. This is also a lot of this is reinforced by social media. It's all me, me, me. And there are so few people looking outward and actually giving the support to the people and actually paying attention to what's happening in real life. And we're seeing a bigger and bigger problem with this. Another thing is look for behavioral change in a person. When any behavioral shift is an indicator that there is a problem. Also, the grandparents can look at the bond between the mother and child. Is she interacting normally with the child? Is she incapable of feeding that child? Is she bonding? Is she not bonding? It's a case of being aware, and I think that is one of the biggest problems in South Africa. Also, have a look at what social services are available in your community. Are there social workers? Because in a lot of rural communities, there simply are no resources. And that is a major problem.
I was about to ask exactly that question, the availability of social services and where this kind of assistance can be reached. Is that becoming a difficulty for people to find? And then people resort to very dramatic decisions.
It's absolutely a problem. And the problem, again, is not only social services, but free social services. Because, there are social workers, there are psychologists, but do most women, single parents, perhaps unemployed, are they even economically capable of reaching out and seeking that help? Or is this simply beyond their means? And that is a major problem in South Africa. It's simply finding the services that are available at no cost or low cost for these people. I mean, the South African police services, they're supposed to have family and child services. You could reach out to them if you suspect a problem. Have a look at what social welfare is in the area. As I said, the church support groups may be of use, but it's really important that we find out what is available in our communities, no matter where you live. So there may be more facilities available in a major city like Johannesburg or Pretoria. Whereas as you move more and more rural, less and less services become available, more and more poverty exists because of lack of job opportunities. And you find that these moms or these dads even become depressed and withdraw. And this is your biggest problem. As soon as you isolate, there's no way of the community understanding and even being able to move in and offer assistance.
I think we've already addressed the question of public education, where to find social services if indeed there is trouble. Final one, it's going to come across as judgmental, but I'm glad you're balancing the scales, that there is both single mothers and single fathers, but in most cases, it's women who tend to bear the responsibility of bringing up children, and fathers, you will find oftentimes, are happy to be absent in their children's lives. What should the message be to the fathers? I'm not saying that this is the case here, but generally speaking.
Well, I think that we have to begin to intercede at a very young age. We have, I mean, for example, I volunteer with a program that's called For the Boys. What about the boys? Because unless we start instilling values of responsibility, being accepted, being present, we will never be able to win these battles. So as you say, it's very important that we start educating children at even earlier than 10 years, start instilling confidence in them, values, decency, taking responsibility. And unfortunately in South Africa, we live in a culture where there doesn't seem to be any consequences for any behavior. And that's apparent from our politicians to our absent fathers. There are simply no consequences for these people.
Yeah.
And, until we can actually teach people that there are huge consequences when you make these decisions to not be present. And what are you raising? Just the next generation of abusers. This is the problem. We've got to teach the boys and the men to become boys and men again. And I think that's a lot of that problem stems from this internet culture as well, where everybody's self-absorbed, nobody's looking out, everybody's me, me, me. There's very little emphasis on being a responsible human being because it's simply not fashionable these days.
Laurie Pieters-James, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for that education. CEO of Cybereti Offender Profiler. Thank you indeed for your time.